I chose 10 old school D&D rules and invited my brother who lives 2,000 miles away to join me online and talk about them. He was not given the list in advance. Please join us to listen in on that conversation and then share your ideas in the comments.
Cool Nerd Mark.
All right, I have here with me today my brother and author, James Michael Orr, who I'm going to call Michael because that's what I've called you since you were a kid, except when that brief couple of years where we called you Mikey because of that cereal thing.
That did happen.
Yeah. And we're here to talk about weird old school rules. We're going to go over 10 of them in all. And Michael, have you seen, Michael has not seen any of these yet.
I have not.
All right. These are going to range anywhere from the original 1974 D&D box set up until, well, I think I might mention third edition, but we're really not going to talk about that as one of the rules because to me, old school is anything that has the letters TSR on the cover.
Yeah. The real old school.
All right, so to kick it off, we're going to talk about damage in combat. So, Michael, have you ever played the 1974 version of D&D?
I have, in fact.
I did once at a convention. In fact, my dungeon master was Frank Menser, who wrote the Red Box, and he did a game called Back to 1974. And one thing that surprised everyone at the table was that when we rolled for damage, the amount of damage we rolled for any weapon was 1d6.
Huh.
And you can see that on the table here at the bottom. I have highlighted. It says all attacks which score hits do 1d6 points of damage unless otherwise noted.
That is crazy. Like everything. Everything's 1d6.
Yeah. Even the to hit system of rolling a d20. You don't see it on this page, but on another page, it calls it the variant or optional to hit system. Because it was assumed that you might have difficulty getting a hold of 20-sided dice.
That's a strange thought, you know?
Yeah.
A strange concept.
And this whole idea of just rolling a d6 for damage did actually come into some later editions. But before we move away from the 1974 edition, we're going to take a side track here. I want you to see some of the artwork from that set. I don't know if you've ever picked it up and read it. This is a picture of 3 different races, and they really look a lot alike.
Yeah, they kind of do.
You have your elf dwarf, your dwarf dwarf, and your goblin dwarf.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's like the same picture, and they just sort of changed up a few of the looks of it. That's very strange.
I don't know how I feel about elves with beards.
Yeah, that feels a little wrong.
And not just like my beard or your beard, but like full on.
Full beard. Everybody has beards.
I think the elf's beard is longer than the dwarf's beard.
You know, they might fight over that.
Yeah, and then here's another one. This is the orc and the barbarian. By the way, there wasn't a barbarian class in 74 because there were only classes: fighting men, clerics, and magic users.
Fighting men.
Yes, they added thief and druid in later supplements.
Oh wow!
The original three books that were in the box set in 1974 only had those 3 classes. We had this artwork of the orc and the barbarian, which I also think kind of look alike.
They sort of do. That I think whoever was drawing them was just kind of like, I know how to draw one thing, so I'm just going to slightly alter it and call it something else.
The orc is like a slightly uglier barbarian. That's about it.
With less hair.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on to number 2 here. So spells were, something that was controversial when we talk about old school D&D, but none of the spells were more controversial than the spell Aerial Servant, which was a conjuration summoning spell, which summoned a aerial servant. I don't know did we ever use that spell?
I want to say we did.
Yeah.
I want to say we had it.
So I do know that it was very specific, and the thing about the spells in the first edition, we're moving on to AD&D now, from the late 70s.
Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. So there was a section in the player's handbook, but there was also a full commentary section on all the spells in the DMG in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And this is from that commentary in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and it says that the spellcaster has to let the Dungeon Master know which kind of protective circle they're going to use when they're summoning this aerial servant. And you
Hmm.
have the magic circle, the pentagram, and the
Da-da-da.
thaumaturgic triangle. And I believe there was a later book. I think it might have been maybe the Book of Vile Darkness in 3.5, where they talked about good casters using a magic circle, evil casters using a pentagram, and neutral ones using the thaumaturgic triangle.
There.
Yeah, yeah. And so this is the page that you really saw a lot of controversy about during the satanic panic of the 80s when everyone thought
Yeah.
D&D had satanic overtones. And you can see why with
Oh
some
yeah.
this and some other artwork from back then that people might think that. In fact, that led to, some of the famous anti D&D tracks, like the infamous Dark Dungeons track.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Debbie, your cleric has been raised to the 8th level. I think it's time that you learn how to really cast spells.
Oh my.
You mean you're going to teach me how to have the real power? And then, that of course escalates into this image where we're literally in a big evil circle casting spells with hoods
Oh
on and things like
wow.
that. Yeah.
It's like that's very Skyrim, I think.
Yeah. And
Prepare Debbie.
yeah, and I
Oh.
do highly recommend everyone that sees this to check out the film that well, it's called Dark Dungeons. I'll probably remember it later, and I can
Yeah, didn't you show that to me?
yeah,
You showed that to me too.
you can watch it on YouTube, or you can buy a copy of it, which I'd recommend you do if you have the ability to do that.
It was really
And
good.
this is it's a satire of this original Jack Trick Chick track from the 80s, but it's played like completely serious. But
Yes, very straight man.
you kind of feel the humor underneath that though, but it's pretty
Oh,
cool.
Debbie. Debbie was she started off such a good girl.
So keeping with the theme of spells,
Yeah.
uh I really have always loved cantrips. They were not part of the original game. They weren't even part of the basic set or first edition D&D until the book Unearthed Arcana came out, and boy, they
Yes.
went all in on cantrips. Uh, how many cantrips you think were in that Unearthed Arcana book
Oh, I don't know.
uh, that I have right here?
I would say like 50
We're doing
maybe.
the Zoom thing, so it's kind of 50. That's very close.
Oh wow.
67.
67. Wow.
Yeah,
Six, seven.
oh, don't do that. Uh, they were categorized into useful cantrips. I guess only 20 of them were useful. Reversed, ledger, is that ledger? How do you say that word?
Legerdemain?
Legerdemain? I don't know. We'll figure that out. Person affecting and personal and haunting sound cantrips.
You know that during Halloween you really want the haunting sound cantrips.
You really do. You really do. And my favorite thing about these cantrips is there were instructions on how to cast them, including the verbal and somatic components. For example, the clean cantrip was really one of the most useful cantrips in real life. I really wish I had this cantrip.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they can remove heavy soil, dirt, and foreign objects from floors. So the verbal component to cast it is a low outrush of air, and the somatic is a circular hand motion. So let's try the clean cantrip. You ready?
Yes.
Whoosh, whoosh.
Kind of like a wax on, wax off thing, you
Okay,
know.
we're actually casting spells right now, Michael. I think
Yes.
my
Oh
guess is
no.
cleaner. Yeah.
Oh Debbie.
And then let's look at three more of these just because I could do that. And maybe if somebody wants me to do an episode where I just do all 67 and the somatic and verbal components, you let me know in the comments and I'll do that.
Somebody who loves
There's
cantrips
got
a
to be a
lot.
market for that somewhere, yeah. So the flavor cantrip also very useful. I mean, I'm drinking like a what is this? Here we go. Yeah, I'm drinking like a lime and club soda because I'm trying to lose weight and it's not very flavorful, but I could cast this cantrip and it would taste great. So verbal component is a muttered lip smacking, and the somatic gesture is a shaking motion. Can you perform that cantrip for us, Michael?
Is that like
Yeah,
that?
pretty much like that. Yeah. And let's see. Then we have the exterminate cantrip. What do you think the somatic and verbal component would be? That how would you exterminate?
I would be like maybe a Dalek, like exterminate, little
That
Doctor
sounds
Who
about
reference.
right. Yeah, I'm actually doing my first watch through a Doctor Who right now,
I
and
heard that. I heard you were
yeah,
doing that. That's exciting.
yeah, it's pretty good. I've gotten to that episode, or at least the first time they introduced the Daleks. All right, so the this is actually not for exterminating people, but for exterminating, annoying rodents or insects or pests. So you basically just point at the thing that you want to exterminate and go zzz, 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 zzz.
Like a off, That'd be cool if you could do that to people, though. If you could
I don't
just,
know, it kind of made me think of Ruby Rod from the Fifth
oh yeah,
Element.
I love that. That's really funny.
But he was casting exterminate.
He was. He was a magician.
And then, although I think clean would be the most useful cantrip to me, I think our father, who loves to tell bad jokes, would love this cantrip, giggle.
Uh-oh. He does
It
love bad
makes the
jokes.
subject involuntarily giggle. The verbal component is a single word or phrase known in magical circles as a punchline, followed by taking one finger, moving it rapidly back and forth.
What's interesting about this is even if you save, you will still chuckle. Like, even though
Yeah,
it's a cantrip, it forces you to chuckle. So
it
if you
says
were under some kind of curse where you died if you laughed, then you could just kill someone that way.
it says if the subject fails, the giggle will last 2 or 3 seconds. If it succeeds, only a brief chuckle will be caused. So you could make Tiamat chuckle with this.
It literally, like any, you could make a god chuckle. I mean, well, I don't know, like the
And
magic
that would be,
resistance,
I mean, yeah,
maybe,
I think magic resistance would still apply,
but
but
maybe like a high level elf, that was snooty
yeah,
and you made him chuckle. It's
yeah,
it's a pretty cool spell. I mean, it's sort of powerful.
yeah. And so Cantrip did continue into second edition, and that's where it
Yes.
even more interesting because you only got so many of these cantrips you could cast a day. I think
Yeah,
it was like you had to give up one of your first level spell slots to cast 4 cantrips, which
you
is
did.
kind of a big ask for lower level casters. It kind of became more practical as you got higher level and you had a few first level spells to
And a
spare.
lot of times I think it added flavor more than anything. I mean, some of them were useful, but it gave people who had a magic user more options.
Yeah.
You know,
Then in second edition, cantrip became a first level spell, but once you cast it, it lasts for 1 hour per level,
oh
and you
wow.
do as many cantrips as you wanted. And they didn't actually name what the cantrips were like they did in first edition. They just gave some guidelines, like they can't do damage or they can't create permanent objects. That everything it creates looks obviously fake, and just things like that. But that really led to a lot of creative uses of cantrip because once you got to mid levels, you pretty much cast cantrip at the beginning of the adventure and you have it always on.
It was a little bit of a cheat, I think.
Yeah. That led to one of my favorite Dragon magazine issues,
Hmm.
which is issue 221. There was an article there by a guy named John Winter called The Little Wish, and it was all about creative uses for cantrip.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, because it really, if you think about it, it's like a wish spell, but with very strict low level limitations. Because you can literally
Yeah.
do anything you can imagine, as long as it isn't that powerful.
Yeah, I mean it was a powerful spell. I think it was a little OP in a way, I mean.
Yeah, and so I think when they decided to do cantrips for third edition, they really pulled back hard
He
And
nerfed
so
it.
now we are back to, if you look at this table, even at 20th level, you only get 4 cantrips per day. That's it.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's
So
it.
yeah, and that's when they went back to having specific cantrips. And those are where you get the cantrips that players today know, like Mage Hand and
Oh yeah.
Prestidigitation and things like
Well,
that.
and I think the limitation too, it was saying these are the spells that you learned before you really became like a
Mhm.
real mage, you know.
Yeah.
And so you wouldn't have more of those, obviously, because you do the bigger spells after that.
And I do think the fact that they were pretty much unlimited in second edition, and then we went back to this 3 a day, 3 or 4 a day thing. People didn't like that, and that's where Pathfinder actually picked up cantrips being unlimited. I mean, you can only choose so many per day, but you can cast
Yeah.
them once per round. And then um, I don't know what they did with fourth edition, but I know fifth edition picked that up, and that's the way it is for fifth edition. If you know more about fourth edition, I kind of skipped over that one. You guys can let me know what cantrips were like in that. I'm kind of curious. Keeping on the topic of spells, there's one spell. This is a first level spell that I thought has gone through some really interesting changes and rules over the years, and
Hmm.
that spell is light. So think about the
Yeah.
light spell. How do you think it's changed from earlier editions till now?
Gosh. I think probably again, I think it was downgraded in terms of power because I remember it being pretty impressive in earlier editions.
Hmm. Well, this is probably what you remember. This is from the D&D Basic set, the Frank Menser Beckme book. And you notice that light, can make a light, just like it can in fifth edition. But you also had a second use for the light spell that really was how it got used most of the time at the table. And that was as a very powerful offensive spell.
Yeah.
It was kind of a little bit of a save or suck, but basically, if they failed the saving throw, they were blinded for a long time. The duration is 6 turns plus 1 turn per level of the magic user, and with a range of 120 feet.
And a volume of 30 feet.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah, so that was not the rule in AD&D first edition, which I really remembered it that way, but I looked it up today. You could definitely cast it at range in first edition AD&D, and you could cast it on a person, but it didn't blind them. It just made them glow, which, if you think about it, is also a good thing to inflict on someone.
Nasty spell. And it's a
Yeah,
first level
and
spell.
in third edition, it made it where it's a touch spell. That
Yeah.
really put it back it down into a smaller, a more controllable level. And I believe you can still touch someone to make them glow, but it doesn't blind them. They did actually revert back to the chance of blinding someone, though, in second edition.
Hmm.
So in the second edition version, you have the option, you can cast it at 60 yards, which is an even better range.
Oh yeah.
And if it's centered on the visual organs, it will reduce their attack. It'll blind them, reducing attack rolls and saving throws by 4. And they get a saving throw for that. So,
That's impressive. And
yeah.
there are certain monsters who have massive visual organs, so
Oh,
be pretty
yeah.
easy to cast it on.
I would love to cast it on a beholder.
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
Would you have to cast it 11 times, though? Once on each eye. I think that's a judgment call for the DM on that one.
maybe just the big eye, the scary eye.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
All
that's
right.
that's crazy how it changed, and it's interesting that these spells change over time.
All right. So next we're going to talk about we've been talking about wizards a lot. We're going to talk about a martial character. We're going to talk about the cavalier class.
Ooh.
Cavalier class first appeared in Unearthed Arcana in 1985. I want to talk about the fact that Cavaliers had a 0 level option built into the class.
Yes, yes,
So,
like a
do you,
pre-Cavalier sort
yeah.
of in
And
training kind of thing.
well, it was actually a little more nuanced than that. So there were 2 different 0 levels for Cavalier. There was the horseman and the lancer. So the horseman was at negative 1500 experience, and then the lancer was at negative 500.
Yeah, now this is coming back to me.
And so the way the rule was written is not every cavalier had to start at level 0. It was really tied into another subsystem in Arcana, which was the social class structure.
Yes.
And so if you have lower social standing, you're not generally they won't let you become a cavalier, but under special circumstances you can. And if that's the case, then you still have to start out as this 0 level instead of starting at first level, and basically earn your spurs and prove that you're worthy to be. It's almost like starting as a squire before you can become a knight.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of when I went to college and I didn't get a high enough score on my ACT, so I had to take a 0 level math course before I could take Algebra 101.
Remedial math.
So this is a remedial cavalier.
Yeah, you are remedial, sir. It's interesting that it was social class. I guess that meant that they didn't get the same training that someone of a higher class would have gotten.
Yeah, I think so. Or it's kind of they weren't fast tracked into the life of a chivalrous knight like someone of nobility would be. Do you think Eric the Cavalier had to start out as a horseman or a lancer? But the Eric the Cavalier from the D&D cartoon?
Definitely. Like all of them, I felt like were 0 level, you know?
Yeah, I feel like I was actually looking for a 0 level system for all characters. Somewhere in my brain, I remember that being a thing, but I can't find it. So if any of you watching this can point me to a 0 level old school system, I'd really like to look at that.
Weren't there a lot of NPCs that were considered 0 level? Like they were
Well,
the 0 level version of a fighter?
I think a lot of the old school rules had something like that.
Yeah.
So, like in the D&D basic rules, you had a character. One of the monsters was just called Normal Man.
It is normal, man.
That's right. I'm not super.
Beware.
I'm Normal Man.
A
Normal
normal
Man.
man appears.
Yeah, and then I believe in AD&D you had like the mercenary, and that kind of goes over into third edition where you had the warrior instead of the fighter, and the acolyte instead of the cleric, and things like that.
Well, when you had a mage that had like 4 hit points, you needed somebody weak to put against them, you know? You had to have the 0 level guys.
Well, and there's always going to be people who aren't adventurers. Not everybody
It's true.
starts out as not everyone's going to become an adventurer. Not every priest or cleric is ever going to be able to cast spells. Maybe they just perform weddings and funerals and bar
Whatever they
mitzvahs.
might do.
Yeah.
Well, there's an old saying that Steven Universe had, if every pork chop were perfect, we wouldn't have hot dogs.
So you're saying Normal Man is a hot dog?
He's the hot dog.
Yeah, I think
Normal man is a hot dog.
maybe I should get a T-shirt made that just says Normal Man. I do
I
have one.
really think that's a good idea.
I do have one that says Henchman. I really like that shirt a lot, and that
Well, that ties into your,
just coincidence that I have a song about that. Maybe I should
Yeah.
make a song about Normal Man. That would be kind of cool too.
that would be a great song.
Normal Man.
I like that. When something
Well,
has been created.
since we're talking about experience levels, I actually mentioned this in an earlier one of my episodes. Do you watch my episodes, Michael?
I have before.
Okay. Well, I did talk about this rule a while back, but I want to talk about it again with you, and that is the concept of gaining experience levels having some requirements. Now, in more recent systems, you gain levels either by milestone leveling up or by gaining XP, but there was kind of the combo rule in first edition AD&D where yeah, you gain levels, but not just because of XP. There were other requirements. Do you remember that?
I do. Like it was harder to level up. There were times when you had the experience, but you couldn't level up unless something else happened.
Yeah, so there was a training requirement. So you had to take time off from adventuring, and at lower levels you had to find a teacher, and at higher levels you could train yourself after you got past, I think, 9th level. But it took time and it took money.
Yeah.
But I recently discovered there was a part of that rule system that I think we disregarded, where the dungeon master had to actually keep track of the player character's behavior, and that
Hmm.
factored into training. So the way it was written in the Dungeon Master's Guide is that the DM would keep track of the player's behavior, not like how well they role played or how well they stuck to their alignment, but how well they actually stuck to the archetypal behavior for their class.
Hmm.
So some of those kind of make sense. Like, a cleric was supposed to, be faithful to their deity and, heal people. But there's actually part of the rule that said, if a thief refuses to pick up loot that they could potentially steal, they could be penalized for it. Or if a fighter doesn't boldly lead, or if a magic user engages in melee combat, they can be penalized for that. And the penalty is that it'll take longer for them to train. And I think the idea behind that is they weren't practicing their skills out in the
Yeah.
field like they're supposed
They
to.
weren't using their craft. So it was a more like complete approach rather than just say you killed a monster, you get enough treasure. I mean, because one of the rules was like gold pieces could be experience, I remember in one of the
Yep.
editions or something like
Gold
that. So
racers were actually the biggest source of experience. And a lot of other YouTubers that I've heard talk about this, like there's one I listened to called Daddy Roll to One. He talks about how rewarding gold pieces instead of more than rewarding XP for killing monsters encourages players to come up with other solutions besides kill the monster. Because if you can get the
yeah.
treasure without the risk, then that leads to some clever play for the reward. But in this system of rewarding XP, the DM would grade each player's behavior, either an excellent, superior, fair, or poor.
So they got a
And it
report card basically.
was a report card, yeah. And excellent was 1, and poor was 4. And then you would multiply that by the number of, let's see, let me get the form. There was actually a formula here.
Of course, there was a formula.
Where's
There
that
were some
one?
crazy formulas in first edition,
Here's
especially.
the formula. Let's put that up on the screen there. So it's the level of the trainee character times 1500 times the number of weeks. And the number of weeks would be that ES, F, or P. So let's say you had a third level character and they had excellent class archetypal performance. So you had a thief that really thiefed it up. Then they wanted to get to second level, then it would be 2 times 1500, and that would be their weekly cost and the number of weeks. So sorry,
Oh,
2 times 1500, and then multiply that again by 1 because they were excellent. But let's say there was a magic user and he just used his sword the whole time and didn't cast spells he was supposed to. Well, then to get to second level, it would be 2 times 1500 times 4. So just to get to second level, you're looking at like 6,000 gold pieces and 4 weeks of
wow.
training. That's
Wow.
rough. Level.
That's hard getting the second level like that.
So it really encouraged players to kind of stick to their class mojo or
Stay in
whatever.
your lane, if you will.
Do you think that's a good or a bad idea?
You know, it depends if you're playing like if you're trying to role play. I
Mhm.
think with people who didn't really understand the nuances of role play, it was probably a good thing because it taught them how to play characters better. But you might have a character who is a blend of using melee with spells. And so,
Yeah, recognize this is a system where one could play a elven fighter, magic user, thief.
yeah,
So that how would you actually judge in that case?
you just basically, are you a good elf? You have to be a good elf,
Yeah, I guess you could go by race in that case, but yeah.
be a little racist, But I mean that it's hard because a lot of it depended on the DM because that a lot of
Yeah.
the times these rules weren't necessarily set in stone. You could basically change them for your campaign. If you didn't like a rule, you could tweak it a little bit.
Okay.
I mean,
I,
that's what I understood from the DMG on the first
did,
edition, right?
Yeah, the number one rule in the D&D Dungeon Masters rule book of the basic set was be fair. And
Yeah.
there's even a section on making up new rules. And if you're making up new rules, just make sure they're fair. And that's up to you to decide what that is as the DM.
And the blue
Uh,
bolts from heaven thing, like, right? Like,
we'll get to that.
oh, I'll bet.
We have two
Well,
more left that I want to talk about. This will be a little bit longer episode, but I think I'm glad that I had you here for this, Michael, and
yeah,
to talk about it. I really felt like this episode would be more interesting as a conversation rather than just me talking about it myself.
absolutely.
So the title of the episode is Weird Rules, and so far a lot of these have been interesting, but they've been this weird. They haven't been this weird. So to get to like this level of weird, we got to pull out one of my favorite books,
Uh-oh.
and that is one of the last books they put out for first edition D&D, and that is The Manual of the Planes
Oh, wow.
by Jeff Grubb, who apparently lives in my area, and I keep running into him. It's kind of cool.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. So what I want to talk about here are hooks and bubbles. And this is one of the coolest, most bizarre rules from this book. And the hooks and bubbles apply to two of the elemental planes. I think maybe they could apply to other elemental planes, but they specifically are mentioned in the elemental plane of air. And then there's a shorter entry in the elemental plane of fire. And so, what a hook is it is a kind of invisible spear or hook shaped device that you can find floating out there in the elemental plane of air. And if your player gets close enough to it, it draws you in like a fish hook. And if it
Oh,
snags you, it is the business end of a conjure elemental spell.
oh, wow.
And so your character gets a saving throw. And if they make the saving throw, no effect. If they fail it, they get kind of thrown off course. But if they make the saving throw right on the number, one of the coolest things happens. And I think, Michael, this happened to one of your characters.
Oh,
They actually get summoned as an elemental from someone else's summoning spell in the prime material plane.
I remember that. I remember that. I
Uh,
can't remember which character it was, but I remember getting summoned, and it was
I've
really
been,
weird.
I've been Eagle, your first
It
paladin.
was
Yeah.
probably Eagle. Yeah.
And so it does say in the rule that you are actually you get your own abilities, not the abilities of the elemental, but you're under the command of that person. And if it doesn't just apply to conjure elemental, it can also apply to aerial servant or to even invisible stalker, which is the spell that you basically send an invisible stalker out on a mission to kill someone. And it says if you get summoned as an invisible stalker, you got to do the job. You got
Wow.
to you,
Kind of like a
you got to
like a Geas
yeah.
spell.
So that would be a really interesting adventure where your character gets snagged by this elemental hook, and you have to go. And that would be really interesting for a paladin.
Yeah, he
How
could
do you
lose his paladin powers.
use your paladin powers because you have to go assassinate some king, and it says it's not even necessarily this prime material plane. So you could even go outside of genre, and like you have to like
Wow.
you get pulled into an alternate prime with a modern technology, and you have to pull off a James Bond style assassin with your paladin.
That's a whole adventure through one hook, right?
Yeah.
A one hook
Yeah.
adventure.
No, I did say it was hooks and bubbles.
Yes.
So bubbles can also be found, and what the bubbles are they are the elemental end of the spell contact other plane. So
Hmm.
if you run into a bubble, the bubble pops, and a question pops into your head that somebody on some material plane out there reached out to ask a divine power, and you're it.
Wow.
And it says that you have the opportunity to answer that question if you have the ability to answer it, or the spell just fails for that person. So I think that would be a fantastic role-playing opportunity to put the character on the spot, and somebody's reaching out for answers from the beyond. What are you going to tell them?
That would be an interesting. I would think it would be like, what is your favorite color? Something random like that. That would be a
Yeah,
cool, another great role playing. I mean, because when we went through the planes, we did a lot of stuff like that. A lot of you used a lot of the mechanics of the elemental planes in our role playing, and I think it made it a lot more interesting. There's a lot
Mhm.
more flavor to the game besides just fighting elementals and fighting, we really felt like we were in this world,
Yeah. Well, and I think the planes were created. If you go far all the way back to the 1974 edition, they talk about the planes, and they're more of like a way to explain, where elementals and where demons and devils come from.
Makes sense.
And it wasn't until later that they really got into what's actually there and what it would be like if your players traveled there. And this book was the first real deep dive. And I mean, I love Planescape back in second edition. I've played
Hmm.
some of the Planar stuff in Pathfinder and a little bit in fifth edition, but this is still my book when it comes to the
It's
planes.
still the OG, and it's
Yeah.
still chock full of great stuff.
So we've arrived at this moment. We got to talk about this.
Yeah, I know. I know what it is.
Let's talk about the Harlot table.
Oh, okay. That wasn't what I was thinking, but yeah.
So
Oh, I
let's give
remember this one.
the background. So in the Dungeon Master's Guide 1978, there is an appendix that has a bunch of different encounter tables for wilderness encounters, for dungeon encounters, and also for city encounters. And the city encounter table, I love that table because it gives you like what would you find in a city if you were wandering around in the day versus if you were running around at night? And it's the same table, but different results depending on what you roll. And there are a few other results for the city table that aren't on at night that aren't on the day one. Like you can encounter a vampire or a wraith at night. But during the day or at night, you can encounter a harlot. And while I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the implications of that, I do want to point out that it says you may find it useful to use the subtable below to see which sort of harlot encounter takes place. And I'm just wondering, why would you want to do that?
Yeah. Someone had to create this table purposefully and say, we need more than just harlot. We need a lot of fun names. And
Yeah.
I think my favorite is Sly Pimp.
Well, let's I got some dice right here. Let's roll to see which harlot we get as long as we're
Yeah,
here.
absolutely.
I've never actually used this table, so let's go ahead and make that happen right now.
First time for everything.
I think that this is the most PG way to do this for sure.
I think
So
so.
I got my dice right here. Let's take a roll. I got 25. So what does that give me?
A brazen strumpet.
It's the only kind of strumpet there should be. All right.
Absolutely.
All right, moving along. We got one more rule to look at. We've come to the section on ba-da-da-da, handling troublesome players.
Oh, here it comes. This is what I was waiting for.
Yeah.
I was often a troublesome player, by the way.
So this is in the running the campaign section in the 1978 Dungeon Master's Guide, and there's really some solid advice here on you're going to get all kinds of personalities at your table, and sometimes you're going to run into some conflict, and you're going to run into some players that are going to make it less fun for everyone, especially if you're running a public game or if you're playing with teenagers because
Yes.
we've all been at that point in our life.
Well, like
And
that
so
birthday party you had where you had all of your friends and a lot of them had never played D&D before and they had no idea what they were doing.
that
Half
was
of
a
them
room full
were,
of troublesome players, yeah, for sure.
yeah, no, they just you barely got through the whole thing, right?
Well, and the basic advice that Gygax gave is no different than what people would say today. Talk to them, pull them
Hmm.
aside, have a conversation. Explain your expectations, explain why certain behaviors are not okay for your table. And if they don't listen, then you ask them
Shoot
not to
'em.
come back. But he does mention that there are strong steps short of expulsion, such as an extra random monster, the attack of ethereal money, which always strikes by surprise,
Whew.
um, permanent loss of charisma for the player that's being a jerk, and your personal favorite, which
Oh
is
yeah. Blue bolts from heaven.
Blue
Or
bolts
from
from
the
heaven. That's
heavens,
right.
rather.
Blue bolts from the heavens. That's right. Striking the offender's head. So,
Right on the head.
advice for all the players out there: behave yourself, or there could be blue bolts from heaven if you have an old school DM.
Absolutely. And they won't see it coming.
All right. Well, I think that's the end of our old school rules discussion.
Yeah.
Michael, do you want to talk about any projects you have going on? Because I know you have a whole writing empire that you're building on. What are you working on right now?
Okay, so I'm working on a couple of horror projects right now. One of them is called Doom Scrolled, and it's going to be part of a collection that I'm doing with some other horror writers. So that's going to come out in June, and so keep an eye out for that. And then a little later, The Maiden of Wood and Steel is going to come out. That's sort of a longer novella, and I'm excited about that one. So that's sort of gothic uh, fantasy. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. So
Okay.
that other projects, but those are my main two right now that I'm working
All right,
on.
we'll put a link to your website where people can follow that. Anywhere else would you like people to follow you, or anything you want to shout out to?
Facebook for sure, like Michael Orr on Facebook. You can find me there. And my website is jamesmichaelorrauthor.com. So you can go there and see what I'm up to. So I'd love for you to check it out.
Cool. And I have coming out actually it just came out this last weekend. Two things. One is a guide on the lower city of Port Corvis. Port Corvis is a city in my world of Cruscaria, and I've already got up for free on my website and on Drive Through RPG the basic overview of the city and the Stadium Bluff neighborhood and the West Cliff district. But Lower City is the most detailed part of the city. It's got 20 different locations with a bunch of interesting NPCs and a lot of conflicts that you can use as adventure hooks. And so
Got a
you
lot
can
of
check that
flavor.
out. Yeah. And then I just put out a music video for my monster short. It's an 80-second song about purple worms. I've got about four other songs about monsters like ochre jellies and carrion crawlers and a displacer beast. And I've got a lot of ideas for other songs. So if you think there's like a monster that needs a short song, you let me know. And
Well,
in the grand tradition of bands like the Minutemen and Minor Threat, I'll put out a quick little punk song on it.
you've got to do a Normal Man song, Mark. I mean, that's inevitable now.
Yeah, you're really inspiring me to maybe write about Normal Man. That would be
I
a
think
good
that would
one.
be good.
Right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in, and I put out I let me know if this format was something that you liked. My next video will probably be a solo one like I did before, but we might do this again. What might be kind of fun, Michael, would be to do like weird old school monsters or weird old school
Oh,
magic
yeah.
items,
So
weird old
many
spells. Yeah,
artifacts would
so
be so much fun.
that'd be a fun one too. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for your time.
All right.
And thanks everybody for tuning in. Bye.
Bye bye.